With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. When you give them the coziest scuba matching set, the real gift is this. And this. And this. This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to give a gift that goes beyond. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
His code name's Jackal. He's an exceptional assassin.
Streaming now on Peacock.
He will kill again, unless we stop him.
Academy Award winner Eddie Redmayne.
You're paying me to kill him. I am charging you for getting away.
The Jackal's here. Look at the exits.
BAFTA Award winner Lashana Lynch.
I will find him, and I will kill him myself.
I like to win.
So do I.
The Day of the Jackal. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Feyre wakes up to a beautiful day in Velaris, only to be met with her friend's residual anger at her decisions back in Hybern. With the help of the Illyrians, Feyre recommences her training and begins flying lessons, while Rhysand introduces her to the library under the House of Wind. The day's worries culminate in a heated conversation that leads Feyre to the one place where she might find the right ally to defeat Hybern, the prison where the Bone Carver resides.
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, death, and depression, will recur throughout the podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we're exploring Sarah J. Maas's most ambitious novel in the Court of Thorns and Roses series.
This is Jack.
And I'm Amy.
This week we're discussing chapters 19 through 21 in A Court of Wings and Ruin. This week we ask ourselves, how is Rhys' internal struggle coming through? And is Feyre adequately equipped to help Rhys' destructive nature?
Themes we see in this section include denial and avoidance. Feyre wakes at dawn in chapter 19. It is the first real day since her return from the Spring Court and escaping Baron's scions in the Winter Court. I think it's easy to forget how little time has passed.
Yeah, none time. None time.
None time.
That's how much time passed.
So I guess it's only natural, having, Feyre and Rhys just barely been reunited, that Feyre decides to wake up Rhys with sex. I mean, I would too.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something we said at the end of season 2 about Feyre and Rhys having sex that we didn't necessarily discuss during their initial reunion in episode 5. When Feyre and Rhys have sex, it can be cleansing. Notice that though Feyre initiates sex with Rhys with the intent to wake him up and pleasure him, Rhys is the one that ends up feasting on her and pleasuring her. Yes, I know Rhys gets satisfaction in the end too, but when we look at it from the idea of sex being cleansing, I think Rhys insists on taking control because he wants to cleanse Feyre of her time at the Spring Court. It doesn't feel possessive to me, and trust me, most things do. When you think about the conversation Feyre and Rhys just had the night before about them acting like equals as High Lord and High Lady, this feels like an equal cleansing his partner of something both think is foul.
If that's how Rhys cleanses from spending time in the Spring Court, I'd be vacationing there all the time.
Monthly.
Just
weekly.
Where are you going? Groceries in the Spring Court. Cleanse me, baby. For the first time in a while for Feyre, when it comes to sex, this is the first time that we really aren't getting a power struggle or forgiving a fight or trying to ignore something. It's really refreshing to see them both enjoy it without any undertones. I believe the language describing the act also shows this. It's described as unhurried and lazy and wicked. Laziness is a privilege. It's a sign of wealth, usually because the rich don't need to hustle and work to keep afloat. Again, Rhys's expression is described as lazy satisfied, and this is really meant to set the tone of the chapter, which I would describe to be more as a day in the life kind of chapter. They all have the privilege of taking a beat, mainly because Feyre's finally back, and Cassian will be able to explain a little bit more on this, that maybe everyone wasn't peaceful while Feyre was gone. The training session with Cassian is layered with sexual undertones, and I find it interesting that it's with Cassian. After all, Cassian is the one that Rhys initially insisted that Feyre sleeps with back in Mist and Fury, which, we're all lamenting she didn't take him up on that. Now, I'm not saying that Feyre and Cassian want to have sex, but that Feyre has used sex as a form of an apology and intimacy, which for me is why she's here with Cassian, and it makes sense to me that there would be sexual undertones because there's some apologetic undertones as well.
I love this thought, but I also want to take it from a sex and violence perspective. As I've said before, sex and violence are inextricably intertwined in this book. Because as soon as Feyre shows up to training with Cassian, he remarks, quote, "I hope you didn't exert yourself too much already because this is really going to hurt." Feyre responds, quote, "2 Illyrian males making me sweat in one morning? What's a female to do?" They know sex and violence go together, and it's so obvious in their banter.
Feyre, it could be 3 Illyrian males if you had better vision and drive.
Yeah.
Like Cassian, Rhys, and Daddy Azzy, just push yourself a little bit more here.
Right? She should have said something like 2 Illyrian males making me sweat in one morning. Oh, wait, there's a third.
I know, right? Seems a little weak. Maybe you should bring in a third.
Yeah.
Oh. We discover pretty quickly that Cassian is mad at Feyre, but of course, Feyre initially assumes it's about her sister. She is quick to blame Nesta for other people's issues. Right? It just doesn't go away.
No, it doesn't. It's always Nesta's fault from Feyre's point of view.
Even looking at episode 8 notes, it takes Cassian a hot minute, but he's able to pretty eloquently say why he's upset. Feyre and Rhys didn't tell Cassian and co. that Feyre was High Lady. Feyre then asks, quote, "What difference would that have made?" And that's a really good question. And now welcome to the tilt-a-whirl ride of feminism that is my mind. Cassian says that Feyre, as Rhys's mate, is Rhys's to protect. Not that he wouldn't protect her, just that she's Rhys's to protect. And Cassian explains that as High Lady, Feyre has now become his and Mor's and Amren's and Asriel's. And I get it. I really do. Feyre became a political figure. It's the difference between, let's say, the President of the United States and the First Lady, hopefully one day, a First Gentleman, someone. But the Secret Service is going to help the president, right? Like, they're not going to forget about the partner. Now, if there are 2 presidents, then both become a priority. I don't know if that might be a lame example, but it's just like, we're not going to save the first partner.
Right. Exactly. If it's a do or die situation, Secret Service is not worrying about the partner. They're only focused on the president.
Yeah. And what I love about this is that Feyre loses more autonomy by being more powerful. Her identity and ownership of herself are gone. On one hand, yay, her value isn't because of her partnership with Rhys, which is what it was. But at the same time, she's lost more of herself. And again, which is natural when you become that kind of leader. But on the other hand, this is an overall hard pill for me to swallow. Cassian is testing me, but he passes. I don't know.
At the end of the day, he means well.
He means well. He just challenges me, but in a good way.
This moment is also one of the first times we hear Feyre say aloud that she does not believe she is essential. Feyre tells Cassian, quote, "I did what I could to get us out of Hybern. I'd rather it was me than any of you. I couldn't have lived with the alternative." Let's talk about this. So the rather her than them thing feels right. That's the attitude we saw in Thorns and Roses. And Feyre also demonstrated that during her lifetime of helping feed her starving family. But somehow this quote-unquote I'm not essential business really throws me off. Is this really what Feyre believes, Jack?
I have an answer, but before I go into the answer, I just want to think about which in the group who among them wouldn't have done that?
Right.
They all would sacrifice themselves over someone else.
Yeah, and it's not because she doesn't think she's essential. It's because she loves them.
Yeah, like, it's funny how if I was Feyre and he came up like, you thought you weren't essential. No, asshole. I thought I was doing you all a fucking favor.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what the hell? Like, would you like me to have stepped back and be like, hey, Cassian, whose wings are shredded, would you like to step in?
Right.
And take care of this? No.
Asriel with an arrow in his chest.
Right? All you bitches were down. I had to come in and save the fucking day.
Yeah.
Sorry. I didn't realize I felt that way. Now for my answer, because that wasn't it. I don't know if Feyre's actions show this belief. We're getting a stronger Feyre who was there to save her sisters, there to be High Lady. Feyre just got a huge promotion to High Lady, and she doesn't think that she's essential. I don't believe that that's her reasoning. So then why say it at all? What is it that she's trying to accomplish? Even in this quote, Feyre is talking about her essentialness as a member of the inner circle, or in that moment. Because it starts off with, quote, I had a way to get us all out. And she's right. Feyre did have a way to get them all out. I think about it a lot. I don't know what other way there would have been. It's like Feyre half understands what she did was vital and half doesn't. They would not have gone out otherwise. And I really do believe that she does not get the recognition that she deserves for that. Which honestly, I'm kind of thinking is a pride thing.
Yeah,
right?
I think so too.
Like Rhys won't admit it. Cassian won't admit it. Like none of the guys are admitting, wow, you really did us a solid there.
Yeah, seriously.
Everyone's just thinking, you thought you weren't essential.
Yeah, weird.
You're putting words in my mouth.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just strategic. We discover that while Feyre was gone, Rhys was beside himself, and we also know that he was out there spying on the queens, something that was pretty reckless. Some undertones that we're getting here, and we'll want to discuss, is Rhys's potentially self-harming behaviors when he is in panic mode.
Which we're definitely going to see a lot of this season.
So much. He's really tortured.
He is a tortured soul.
It makes sense why Feyre would then lock that you die, I die on him.
Mm-hmm.
Not healthy.
No,
it's not great.
Healthy at all.
We don't encourage this, but I love the pettiness.
Yeah, no, that's true. I always thought it was stupid, but now that we're talking about how Rhys might be self-destructive, especially when he's in a panic, yeah, that's the only way to guarantee he doesn't go, like, completely off the rails.
Right? And maybe petty's not the right word, but, and it's, again, not healthy.
Right.
We do not advocate this at all. But in a fantasy setting where none of these characters are real, I kind of love it.
We then come to really understand what's happening in this scene. With Feyre's departure to the Spring Court, Cassian relived the trauma of losing Rhys to Amarantha 50 years ago. I love Cassian, and this moment makes me love him more. But I want to talk about this from a writing perspective, because what SJM is doing here with Cassian's description of his experience is setting up really, really nicely what happens for Feyre when Rhys sacrifices himself one too many times and ends up dead. It is such a small thread that is very nicely woven into the gargantuan tapestry that is Wings and Ruin.
Yep. Feyre is the red herring of sacrifice. We're forced to believe that Feyre is the one who's sacrificing herself, but when you look at the actions of everyone, it makes sense that it's Rhys.
Because he's diabolical with his self-destruction.
He really is. My note there when I was saying, like, we're forced to believe, like, I am saying we're being forced. And again, this isn't a bad thing on SJM's part. It's smart.
Oh, it's great.
But we keep being told that Feyre thinks that she's not essential.
Yeah.
So she doesn't think that. Yeah.
Right. She doesn't think it, but we're told it so that we'll think she really will sacrifice herself in the end.
Exactly. When her actions are probably the least self-sacrificing compared to everyone else.
I mean, they're stupid and reckless.
Yeah, totally.
But not with the intention of sacrificing herself.
Exactly.
What I also love is Cassian calling out Feyre and Rhys for their bullshit. These two suckers are the same and don't ask for help enough from their family. In doing so, Cassian just continues to pound into our head what SJM has been trying to teach us this whole time about Rhys and foreshadows what's to come.
I do love that moment where Feyre's like, well, do you go for help? And he's like, yeah, I do.
Yeah, I have to delegate.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, maybe like that's what being a leader is.
Yeah, it's true.
Cassian out here being the voice of reason.
Who knew?
Who knew?
Cassian says, quote, Rhys is inclined to do everything himself, to give everything of himself. He still thinks it's not enough. If the High Lords and Kier don't step up, he'll still face Hybern, and will take the brunt of it so we don't have to. And you know what? Feyre knows Cassian's right, but the second she thinks about it, she shuts it down and shoves it away. Denial, avoidance, the first stage of grief. As an aside, I might spend the rest of the season describing how Feyre's actions in Wings and Ruin align with the first 4 of the 5 stages of grief, but I haven't really thought that hard and far ahead, so we'll see.
TBD.
TBD.
This moment, though, Feyre literally says, quote, I shut it out, shoved it down, focus on breathing. Breathe in, breathe deep, breathe through, breathe out.
Oh my gosh.
All these... Anyway, obviously Taylor Swift quote. Was that the first Midnight's quote so far this season? I can't remember. We're 7 episodes in.
No, we talk about karma in the first or second episode.
All right, well, that's good. Like it's been too long. Old habits are coming back. Feyre of early Mist and Fury would totally do this. Ignore it, shove it away. It's too sad, too big, too scary, and requires too much emotional communication. Nope, not our girl. Like, Feyre is supposed to be healed and better than this. Her time at the Spring Court brought back old habits, and I'm not saying it's because of her trauma with Tamlin, but rather she entered a role she had with Tamlin once she got to the Spring Court. The role of not communicating, and I believe that she's stuck in that right now.
That's a great point. I mean, she keeps trying to break away from how she was in the Spring Court, but she's not there.
Yeah, it's like, sometimes when we go with family, we kind of put on these old roles and titles and positions, even though that's not necessarily who we are, but we just slip into it.
Yeah, like I do all the cooking and cleaning.
Yeah, it's just like everyone kind of slips into it, but it's like, we grow. You're moved past it.
Yeah. When Nesta enters the scene, Cassian turns predatory, and that's Feyre's word, not mine. The only thing I want to point out is another callback to sex and violence. Cassian says to Nesta, quote, seems like you're a little on edge, Nesta, and you left so abruptly last night. Any way I can help ease that tension? The note in my book that I wrote says he'd be happy to train her or fuck her.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all.
And he does.
Yeah,
both.
That's true. He does both.
He does both. Rhys sends Azriel to pick up Feyre, and I just, Rhys knows. He says, quote, I set another pretty face for you to admire, not as beautiful as mine, but a close second. Even Rhys knows that Daddy Azzy is a beautiful man.
I wonder if they've done it. Oh, that would be a great fanfic.
I think my mouth just watered. No.
Right?
Like, what the, if all, I don't need to be involved.
No.
The 3 men.
I just want to watch.
I'll read it, I'll watch it, whatever. Someone write it, please. Someone has.
Oh, well, plenty of people have, I'm sure.
Also, Azriel is described as, quote, night-chilled mist and cedar, and his black hair seems to gobble up the blinding sunlight. If SJM was going to start linking Azriel with Elaine, I think that would have been the first moment. And I know what you want to say, but I want you to know I've already added my notes for the next episode, Amy, and you're not going to be happy with my response.
Fine. I just think I've got great points for episode 8.
It's, you make a valiant
effort.
I see what you're saying. I don't think what you're seeing is wrong, but...
We'll save the discussion for episode 8.
Episode 8. No one saw your face, but I could, you were smiling nonstop, and I had to stop.
She had to take away my happiness.
I was like, oh, joy? Not on this podcast. In this particular quote, if anything, by pointing out that he consumes light, it's more of a reason why him and Elaine wouldn't work. He would consume her and not the way that we would all pay to read about. I'm not going to make a case that Azriel is meant to be with any other particular woman. Hello, Gwen people. I don't think that's a spoiler. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, that's still not a spoiler. I'm not saying that he's meant to be with anyone else. I don't know, to be honest. I'm just trying to point out the lane of it all.
And I still hold out hope for Azriel and Elaine. That's all I'm saying.
It's okay. Everyone else is allowed to have hope here.
Jack is just here to crush it. During her training with Azriel, Feyre spends time stalling, hesitant to make the shift to produce her Illyrian wings. She thinks to herself, quote, touching that part of me, the part Tamlin had given me. Some vital piece of my heart recoiled, even as something sharp and vicious in my gut preened at what I'd taken, all I'd taken. The vital part of Feyre's heart that recoils at touching Tamlin's magic inside of her could be the part of her damaged by Tamlin's actions and or the part that is in love with Rhys and has fully rejected Tamlin. So what is the part that preens? Well, preening is what animals do, specifically birds. The connotation is one of pride. It's the animal within Feyre. It's a great subtle nod SJM is doing to the underlying theme of this book about the monster within, and it's wonderfully done.
What's funny is like the use of preened, because it is a prideful moment. That whole quote is really kind of two polarizing thoughts.
Yeah.
Because she's proud of what she's taken, but you can also sense some guilt.
Yeah.
Because sticking with that quote, preened at what I'd taken, all that I'd taken, is this a moment where we're starting to get some self-realization that maybe Feyre took something more from Tamlin, that maybe the whole spring court destruction thing might have been too much?
No.
No, it's not.
I mean, in my mind, it's not. I think that's too self-aware for Feyre of this moment. To me, I think she just dislikes any association with Tamlin.
Yeah.
That's why she went to destroy everything he had. But she likes having that power.
Yeah, she loves having that power. But I'm also wondering how much of it is also the idea of that she's proud of everything that she's taken. And I feel like I have to keep warning everyone, like, I'm not being pro Tamlin here. He was abusive to Feyre. That doesn't mean that what she did wasn't mean.
Oh, absolutely.
And not just the destroying the court, but making him believe that she was back for, all that stuff. Whether he deserves it or not, that's like an entirely separate subject. But it was just mean.
To me, it soils her character because it's vindictive. And that's not something a 100% morally correct person does.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you're being vindictive, it's just, it's gross.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean like I haven't done anything like that.
Right.
Don't think that we're more moral high ground characters over here. But, we can say it's gross.
We can. When Feyre finally produces the wings, and after Azriel has examined them, he instructs her to not let her wings drag on the ground, because it's a sign of weakness among Illyrians. I really like this scene because what we're seeing is Feyre unintentionally letting her guard down. Her wings are literally on the ground, and she is so weak that she has a really difficult time lifting her wings.
Which is why it's so stupid that in the next episode, we talk about Feyre trying to fly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's just funny.
It is funny.
No, it's no crazy spoiler. You guys know what happens, but it's just like, I can't even lift my wings up.
But I'm going to try and fly.
I'm going to give this a whirl. We also get to see more of Azriel smiling and being funny and having a cocky side. And like, let's just stick with that cocky side.
Please.
The
reason, getting back to more serious topics. The reason why I like this whole scene is because I think Azriel is among the only individuals Feyre is capable of being truly unguarded with. And we get to see that in the form of her flying lessons with the Shadow Singer. They are in a lot of ways kindred spirits, in that they both have spent time feeling their otherness or separation from those who are now considered quote-unquote their kind. If you remember from Season 2, I draw comparisons to major events in both Feyre and Azriel's lives that happened at the same age, at the ages of 8 and 11. I think this was all intentional for this moment, so that Feyre felt safe being vulnerable with Azriel in what will become an essential skill that will ultimately save Feyre's life.
I have thoughts.
Sure.
You say that Azriel's the only one that Feyre can be really truly unguarded with, which is, a brazen statement, some might say. Especially since we do see a lot of Feyre and Cassian together, and we get more scenes of the two of them together. And initially, I was about to be like, interesting, I'm not sure how I feel about it. Prove me wrong, but I'm going to enhance your statement more so, maybe.
Okay.
I feel like that would not have been the case, that Feyre is the most unguarded with Azriel, if Nesta hadn't been around.
Interesting.
Because I feel like with Cassian, Feyre can't stop mentioning Nesta.
Yeah, it's true. Nesta's always on her mind when she's with Cassian.
And Cassian said, like, it's not all about Nesta. Like, he said, no, she's not always on my mind. And, I mean, he didn't say that specifically, but you know what I mean. Because in Mist and Fury, I would say Feyre is more likely to be unguarded with Cassian.
Yeah, and we see that when she first starts training with him and punches and starts crying, and that's when she's processing the whole Tamlin stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. Nesta's presence definitely interrupts that element of their friendship. I think for me, maybe I'm misstating what I said earlier. I think that on the topic of Feyre's otherness, for sure, and her learning how to be high fae, I think she's the most unguarded with Azriel on that topic.
Because they're both misfits, outcasts, like
Exactly.
They don't fit into the mold. Agreed. I totally agree. But your thought sparked more thought.
No, I love it.
And here we are having thoughts, which then our listeners have thoughts.
Which we'll hear and talk about in mini episodes.
Please go to booktalkforbooktalk.com.
By the start of chapter 20, Rhys and Feyre are in the library below the House of Wind. It is here that we learn that not only has Feyre never been to a real library before, but Fae intentionally kept humans out of libraries, going so far as to burn them down at the end of the war if they couldn't winnow the books out. Knowledge is power. We've been saying this since early in Thorns and Roses, and it's clear that the Fae never intended for humans to have that power. I don't think this excuses them at all, but it seems that the penchant for Rhys and Tamlin to keep information from Feyre must have been bred into them when you think about the history of the High Fae and humans.
If it wasn't for the fact that we recorded many episodes today before this, I wouldn't have thought of this. So thank you, listener. I can't remember who it was, but one of our listeners sent an email talking about what Amarantha said, that we taught you poetry, we taught you art and Amarantha talking about humans, and you guys did nothing with it. And now here we are getting another account saying, no, the Fae didn't teach you guys shit. They kept you out. And I'm not saying that I believe Amarantha. It makes sense that Amarantha would be the liar of it. But I just find it to be good writing that at the first book of the series, we have the evil Fae saying, no, we taught you so much. And then here we are, the last book of this trilogy, and we have good Fae Rhys being like, no, we did not help humans.
Yeah, we kept everything from them.
It's also a stark reminder of who Feyre was. She was an illiterate human who couldn't even dream of being a library full of Fae and being able to read. So our girl has just come a long ways away that here she is in a library.
That basically she owns?
What?
Weird. We also learned that half-Fae, half-human offspring were treated poorly by humans and Fae alike after the war. Many were killed or forced to live unsavory lifestyles to survive. When we take this information all together, this tells me why the King of Hybern makes his side of the war a personal attack on the Archeron sisters. Because, as we will soon see, he singles them out hard. It's not only that they took away some of the Cauldron's power. If you think about it, it's because they're humans who have power. The Archeron sisters being High Fae is a consequence of being remade. At their core, though, they are humans who have taken power from the Fae. Feyre from the High Lords and her sisters from the Cauldron. And that is unacceptable to an individual like the King of Hybern.
Yep. And to me. No.
Oh my gosh.
It also begs the question, how strong can a human be? Elaine was gifted sight because the Cauldron saw something in her, decided to give it to her, and Nesta clawed her way into getting more than it was willing to give. This starts to challenge the way some might think about humans. Maybe humans aren't weak. Maybe when given just a little bit of magic, they can become dangerous.
Such a great thought. That they can be just as dangerous as the Fae.
And they didn't even need an opportunity. Nesta wasn't given an opportunity to get power. She took it.
Right.
And I think that could be particularly terrifying for Hybern because, as we find out in the upcoming chapters, the Cauldron's so powerful. It's not a death god, but enough power that the death gods are afraid of the Cauldron.
Mm-hmm.
And then a human just takes something?
Yeah, that's terrifying.
For a second, I was just thinking, I'm not a Nesta. I'd just be like, hi, can I possibly please? Sorry, I know I'm intruding in your space cauldron. I'm really sorry. I know I'm here. Okay, stop saying sorry. The gift I give you is stop apologizing. Oh my God, thank you.
That's amazing.
I'm a man.
Oh my gosh.
It's fine. Only 2% of our listeners are men.
It's here in the library we meet Clotho, a priestess and librarian. An interesting fact for those of our listeners unfamiliar with Greek mythology, Clotho is the youngest of the three fates, specifically the one who spins the thread of life. She is said to decide when a person is born and whether individuals would be saved or die in specific situations. In fact, Clotho brought back Pelops, king of Pisa, back to life when his father killed him. Though Clotho doesn't necessarily perform any actions that influence life or death in Wings and Ruin, her mere presence could be a warning to us as readers that life will hang in the balance somewhere in this novel, and maybe even a sign of hope that life can return.
I love that. I also think it shows a lot with Clotho and Nesta's dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Nesta's fate is within her hands.
Yeah. I love it. I thought when I learned this, because I recognized the name Clotho and knew it had something to do with Greek mythology, but I didn't know the particulars. So when I went back and looked, I was like, SJM did such a great job.
It's great.
Side note, Rhys mentions Mor and him in the library when they were children. Okay, but does he mean children? Does that not mean Mor was allowed to come to the House of Wind in Velaris when her family wasn't? Or did this all happen when she turned 18 and rebelled against her family? The timeline does not make sense to me, nor does the reasoning.
That's a very, very good question. Does this mean that her father was allowed to come when Rhys's father was in charge, and then once Rhys became in charge, he kicked him out, maybe?
I don't think so, because as we're going to see in a few episodes, I think it's implied that Keir never knew about Velaris. And he just put 2 and 2 together that there's a place that they go to that Mor loves. But I don't, why was Mor allowed and no one else was?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, because what, you're not going to trust the child to keep their mouth shut.
Right.
Daddy, we were in a secret city.
I don't know.
Children were laughing and playing. They get to be above ground. Why can't I?
Oh my gosh. I don't know.
I personally feel like SJM is trying to give clues about this library and what it means. Feyre describes it as, quote, carved red stone in a sealed set of obsidian doors, veins of silver running throughout. Beautiful, terrifying. Like some great beast was kept behind it. All right, so obsidian door and the beautiful, terrifying description. It reminds me of Rhys. His walls have been described as obsidian, I believe, at some point. We know that Feyre has thought of him as being both beautiful and terrifying, but we also know that Rhys has his inner beast, something that the library also has. Rhys and the library are connected. We learned that there is, in fact, a monster living in the library, and the idea that something dark and mysterious shares space with those in need to heal and be protected is just really beautiful, and to me, it makes it even more Rhys-like.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially when you think about, he finds a lot of comfort in this place.
Yeah. Or the fact that Bryaxis ends up saving Feyre, but only after a bargain. The same way that Rhys saves Feyre.
After a bargain. That's true. Good call out.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. My entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
I want to look into a small moment when Feyre asks Rhys if humans will be allowed in Velaris if the wall comes down, and he says yes. Quote, I squeezed his hand, savoring the hard-earned calluses on it. No, I would not let him bear the burden of this war, its cost alone. I think it's important because just last chapter, we saw Feyre bury the idea of what Rhys would do to save everyone. This is a moment of wanting to show that he's not alone. But does Feyre actually communicate it to him? No, not yet. We'll see it in a bit, but in this moment, no. But then what do we get? We get Feyre making fun of him. When Rhys reveals that he goes to the library to find solace, she says, Poor baby High Lord, I crooned, having to run away to find solitude for brooding. Who has a reaction like that? When it's I just need a minute of peace.
It's just so tactless.
As someone who is considered a highly sensitive person, one of the things is needing to take a beat, walk away. And it's so rude.
Yeah.
Which then, I think she gets hers, like Feyre feels guilty about it real fast because Rhys reveals that he relates to the women in the library because they're sexual assault survivors. Like Rhys, maybe you feel like an asshole now, Feyre.
Maybe.
Maybe you think before you talk.
That's asking a lot.
Yeah, but like as if I have. As if any of us have.
Yeah, it's true.
No, I think you think before you talk.
I usually try to.
Yeah, it's like 50-50 for me. 70-30. 80-20. Anyway, at one point, Rhys tells Feyre that it's her library too. And Feyre takes a moment and she relates it internally to what she went through and the trauma that she survived. But I want to take us back to, I want to say a couple episodes ago, that Feyre was fortunate to not experience sexual assault. Not that what she went through was a walk in the park, but this library isn't really hers as much, the way that Rhys was implying, as it is for Rhys and even Nesta.
I don't know. I think it's very kind of Rhys to suggest that Feyre's abuse from, Amarantha and Tamlin equates to sexual assault. I wouldn't say the priestesses in the library would agree.
Yeah, and it's just so, like, you're in the wrong counseling group.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's not her journey, and it doesn't diminish or undermine what Feyre went through, but I think it's fair to say that those who have survived sexual assault, they're in a different group.
Yeah.
It's just like you can't relate to it unless you've been through it.
Right. Trauma is trauma, but sexual trauma, you can't, it's apples and oranges.
Yeah, you can't compare. Before we meet Clotho, Feyre notes, quote, "I didn't know the priestess left their temples." What about Ianthe then?
Yeah, she was never at a temple.
How does that work? She was like living with you guys.
I know. Maybe it's because she was a high priestess.
Yeah, like there's a ranking, like the high priestesses get to leave.
Yeah, but she has acolytes who follow her who would technically be considered priestesses as well.
Consistency.
Yeah. Consistency is an issue. No offense.
We still love you, SJ.
We do.
The thing is, I want to say that she has the answers.
But you don't think she does?
No, I do. I do think, I want to say it.
I'm sure she has the answers.
I want to say it, Amy. I want to say it so bad.
Clotho's backstory is another instance of sex and violence. In this case, death. The implication is that Clotho was raped and tortured by a group of males. When Rhys discovered who those males were, he let Moore hunt those males, and I can only imagine that resulting in their death. What's interesting about Clotho is how she serves as the direct opposite of Ianthe to me, but still somehow she's also a catalyst for Feyre to begin accessing some remorse for her actions with Ianthe. What do I mean? Well, let's look at the two. Clotho was sexually assaulted, while Ianthe was the one doing the assaulting. Clotho has magic, while Ianthe does not. Clotho's unable to speak, and Ianthe used pretty lies to make herself important. So, in those ways, they're opposites. However, the one thing the two priestesses do have in common are their damaged hands. Clotho's damaged by the males who assaulted her, while Ianthe's hands were damaged by herself while under Feyre's control. At the sight of Clotho's hands, Feyre thinks, quote, "For a heartbeat, I was in a spring wood. For a heartbeat, I heard the crunch of stone on flesh and bone as I made another priestess smash her hand, over and over." Feyre cannot think of Ianthe's name in association with any guilt she may feel. Instead, that guilt is extended to Clotho. And Feyre assumes Clotho doesn't have magic, even wonders how Clotho picked up the books and feels guilty for the priestess, only to find out that Clotho manages just fine because she does have magic. But why did Feyre make this assumption? It's because Ianthe does not have magic. Thereby, Feyre transported not only her guilt from Ianthe to Clotho, but also Ianthe's traits. It's not great, but what it's showing me is that Feyre's spring court exterior might finally be starting to crack.
Mm-hmm. Thank goodness it's cracking. When I first read it, I kind of took it as Feyre experiencing almost her own PTSD. Then I was like, you don't have PTSD. And then I went back to it and thought, maybe, yes, you do. Because for the first time, Feyre is relating to the villain and not the survivor.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I also want to point out, and Amy, please tell me if I'm wrong, that there are only women who have been crippled one way or another because of violence. Like, I'm pretty sure there aren't any other characters in this world. And I know you might be thinking like Papa Archeron, but he's been healed. And I'm thinking in particular Clotho and Emery. Like those are only women have been permanently scarred like this.
Yeah, I saw your note, and, the two males that come to mind in my response are Lucian, who had his eye removed, and then the male fairy in Thorns and Roses, who Amarantha removed his wings, but he ultimately died.
Yeah, that was more of a death blow than a crippling blow.
Yeah, so...
And then Lucian gets a special eye.
Right. They're not crippled in a way that they're unable to perform certain actions anymore.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if we want to delete this, and this has no context in it for everything, but a thought popped into my head. We're derailing here.
Oh, okay.
We were talking about the library being a safe haven for sexual assault victims.
Yeah.
And spoiler for Silver Flames, right? And then there's the whole like Elaine Azriel, or is it Azriel and Gwen? Every mate and character situation, one of the partners has been sexually assaulted and the other one hasn't.
Oh, shit.
Lucian with Ianthe.
Yeah.
Nesta. And then Rhys and Gwen. And Azriel was the one who found and saved Gwen. And he was the one who literally reached for her in her time of need.
Yeah.
Just want to throw that out there. Whether we want to keep this in or not. Isn't that kind of
No, it's a good point.
Interesting moment of like, you know what?
Yeah, it's a great parallel.
There's a pattern.
Yeah.
Even with Bryce and Hunt, because Hunt had been abused as a slave.
Yep, you're right. Is it the same in Throne of Glass?
It's been so long I can't really remember, to be honest, but
okay.
Probably.
Okay. As Feyre and Rhysand settle down to do their research, there's a brief moment that's kind of touching between Feyre and Rhysand, but it quickly devolves into brazen flirting, which Rhys then deprives Feyre of as she's getting hot and bothered. Rhys falls a little bit into his old habits here. He blames Feyre for his reactions. Quote, "I can't work with you distracting me. If you're sitting next to me, the last thing on my mind is reading dusty old books, especially when you're in all that tight leather."
Sex, like knowledge, has to be earned. And right now, Rhys is the keeper of sex and knowledge. But I want to recap. So all of this is Rhys saying, "Hey, Feyre, everything in this library is about healing and finding your safe space and helping sexual assault survivors. Now let me fuck you up here against the wall." Time and place.
Yeah.
Right? He literally said that this library is for survivors. And everyone here has been traumatized.
It's a little messed up.
He touches her.
I know.
He touches her. Granted, she has her pants on, but he still touches her.
I know.
In the midst of this library?
I know. Sometimes I'm like, is this Rhys being stupid, or is this SJM trying to work us up and get hot and bothered as readers and kind of fucking with the narrative?
It kind of, because like it reminds me of like people make joke about when Feyre goes down on Rhys, but there's like, the cries of
the dead.
To me, this is worse.
Yeah, this is pretty bad.
This is really bad. You think like there's one Fae female in the corner just like living her life, and then she sees that, and like I don't want to have to know what she experiences.
Yeah.
They're all Fae. They have heightened senses of everything.
Yeah, everyone would hear.
Everyone could smell. Can't you smell when there's someone's horny?
Yeah.
No one wants to smell your horniness. Rhys and Feyre get into a heated exchange, and Rhys talks about sacrificing himself. Feyre bares her teeth at him and says he's given enough and demands to know where this is all coming from. This is a good start, having a conversation, but Feyre is not picking up what Rhys is putting down. He is still hurting.
So the moment you're talking about is after they've done their research and they're coming back together to chat. And from my point of view, the conversation with Rhys that Feyre had earlier in the chapter, or last chapter, about Rhys's self-sacrificing nature rears its head in this confrontation between Feyre and Rhys after their research for the day is done. Rhys insists on taking the brunt of Hybern in order to save Prythian, to which Feyre disagrees, insisting he doesn't have to shoulder the entire burden. This conversation leads Feyre to formulate a plan, in which she suggests, quote, "What if we had the monsters?" The irony here is that though Feyre is talking about the Bone Carver specifically, she will also gather both literal monsters as well as the monsters within herself and those around her. Another interesting detail about this conversation from a food is power slant that I want to touch upon. The conversation starts with Feyre and Rhys eating grapes, though during the conversation it ends with only Rhys eating. This might suggest a slight power imbalance right now, with Rhys fully intent on sacrificing himself to win the war. What this made me think of, however, when I first read it, was Feyre's vision of the future when she was in the mountain retreat in Mist and Fury, before she and Rhys were mated. In her vision, she saw herself eating summer berries. And when she decided to accept Rhys, she saw him there with her, feeding her berries.
Oh,
could this be a callback? I would like to think so.
Yeah. Good call.
Thanks.
Good job. Oh. Listeners, sometimes when we feel like we have good points, Amy and I will highlight our notes so that the other person knows not to read it. So that was a genuine shook.
Yeah, you did not know about that beforehand.
Good job.
Chapter 21 follows Feyre into the House of Wind, where the High Lady finds Amren training Nesta. I want to restate my case that I've said in the past, that Feyre is a bad sister.
Yes. Yep. Sorry. Did I say that out loud? Shock. Yes, Feyre's a bad sister.
When Feyre questions what Amren is doing with Nesta, Amren reminds Feyre that Nesta needs to learn how to shield herself, quote, from prying minds and powers that she'll encounter at the Court of Nightmares the next day. Feyre thinks to herself, quote, I should have thought of that if Nesta were to join us, be at the Hewn City, she would need some defenses beyond what we could offer her.
No shit, Sherlock. Damn it. I feel like Feyre says this a lot recently. Like, she said it in the last episode, and she says it next episode. Well, she does another one. Should have thought of that.
Yeah, kind of.
There's a lot you should have thought about, Feyre.
Yep.
Even the way Feyre comes into the scene, she so clearly has an idea of what's already happening. She questions Amren. Is this part of her training? Amren explains. I said that really sassily, so I'll give her credit. Is this part of her training? Amren explains, and Feyre keeps questioning. Like, what? Like, Feyre's not happy with any of Amren's answers. When Feyre realizes that she messed up and she didn't think of Nesta's safety, it says, quote, Nesta at last looked at me, her face as cold as ever. Of course it's cold. It's probably obvious on Feyre's face that she's surprised. Like, obviously Nesta would be mad. You forgot about her safety.
Yeah, it's messed up.
Yeah.
I'd be pissed too.
I'd be so pissed. Like, I'm sorry, you forgot. I mean, I get pissed off at being forgotten for anything, let alone my safety.
Right. Absolutely. Let's talk about the positioning in this scene. Feyre stands in the doorway without entering the room where Amren and Nesta are training. Intentional? Absolutely. Feyre and Nesta, though similar, are separated right now because of their disagreement we discussed in the last episode about the High Lord meeting and their, general difficulty understanding each other anyway.
To me, it also shows that Feyre is standing on the outside of this dynamic, that she is the one who doesn't understand because she's not there. Amren and Nesta are, and I'm not sure if having fun is the right word, but they're getting along. The first person Nesta has gotten along with since probably before she was poor in her human years. Feyre wishes them luck, and Amren says Nesta doesn't need luck. Nesta laughs, and Feyre thinks, quote, perhaps letting Amren and Nesta train together was a bad idea. It's only bad because Feyre doesn't get to be part of that secret club.
Yeah, it's weird how quick she is to judge Amren and Nesta and what they're doing together.
I wonder how much of it is jealousy.
Maybe.
Because Feyre is not the shiny new toy of... I'm totally speculating here, guys. Like, I'm not saying that this is actually the case, but, if I wanted to, be Feyre's therapist here, I mean, Feyre was Feyre Cursebreaker. She was made. She was the first and forever. And, she's special. She has all these special powers. And who's the one that she's extra pissy towards? Nesta, who has special powers because they don't know anything about what Elaine has yet. Maybe there's some secret sibling rivalry here.
Maybe. Feyre was the one that was Cauldron blessed, and now she's not the only one.
Yeah, Feyre was Cauldron blessed. Nesta is Cauldron stolen.
Cauldron thief.
Cauldron theft.
And this isn't the only thing I'm annoyed with Feyre about. Not only is Feyre being kind of pissy with Nesta and Amren, Feyre and Rhys also agreed to do to Amren the one thing everyone has constantly done to Feyre this entire series, which is withhold information.
We don't believe in learning from our mistakes here.
No, not at all. Or other people's mistakes.
Right.
Quote, Rhys and I had decided to wait to tell Amren about my trip to the prison. The last time we'd gone to the prison, she'd been testy. I'm sorry, that's actually a really rude way to describe it when she's the one who was able to help you get over your fear of going under the mountain, right?
Yeah.
Like,
It's
don't
rude.
call her testy.
She
She helped you.
testy. Yeah, like she's upset that you're going to the place that brought her a lot of trauma and she wants you to be safe. Wow, what a bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
So testy.
But are we surprised?
No.
Feyre has only learned really from Rhys, who is the king of withholding information. Little does everyone know what Rhys has up his sleeve. Even at dinner, quote, Moore warned Rhys once while we ate that he should thoroughly consider any offer Keir might give him in exchange for his army. Rhys had shrugged, saying he'd think about it when the time came, a non-answer, and one that made Moore grit her teeth. The entire war and the strategy of Rhys and Feyre and their leadership is built around withholding information.
Initially, I was pissed off because he was withholding information, but then you have Moore's reaction like that. And it's just like, if you're going to have that type of reaction, then I would withhold information too.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it is shitty that they're not telling Amryn and that they're not telling Moore. But Moore at this point, I don't know if Amryn's done this, has proven that they're not able to separate themselves from war strategy. So it's not great. I'm happy I'm not in there.
Yeah, I'm glad they're not my family.
I'm happy that we're not in this like Prithian world and in the middle of a war and you have to figure out what's the right or wrong way.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm glad for my boring life.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Let's talk about Feyre's nightmare. She's always got one in each book, and this one is no less significant. A lot of what drove Feyre in Thorns and Roses, as well as Mist and Fury, can be tied back to the guilt Feyre felt for what happened to Claire Better. But in her nightmare, Claire is replaced with images of Nesta and Elaine. Nesta is brutalized like Claire. Elaine is tied to a spit like a pig, like how the guards under the mountain threatened to tie Feyre to a spit. By the way, see that Elaine and Feyre connection?
I saw it and I like it.
This image, though Feyre doesn't revisit it, is going to come back into play again, so hold on to this thought.
Amarantha makes a reappearance, which I think is interesting because I feel like Hybern is the latest trauma, so why aren't we dreaming there? I don't know, maybe you should stay tuned next week when we discuss that in episode 8.
Do we?
I do.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I guess a thought I'm going to say now, but we can put a pin in it, is that maybe
think it.
Amarantha is the ultimate evil in Feyre's mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because she died because of Amarantha. I don't know.
It's a good pin.
Pin it.
Pin it. We'll come back.
Note how the fairies turning the spit that Elaine is on are, quote, gnarled and masked, like Spring Court fairies had once been. It's pretty clear that Feyre's blaming Tamlin for this situation, at least subconsciously. And then Feyre sees Rhys in her nightmare. Rhys, who chooses to follow Amarantha to the bedroom where Amarantha will sexually assault him. Rhys's wings are out, and Feyre knows Amarantha will destroy those wings, the wings they both love.
I think this is Feyre on a subconscious level, seeing Rhys being self-destructive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that he chose Amarantha to be self-destructive, but the wings that he normally protected being out, that's something he would not do, just like all these other destructive things that he's doing right now.
Exactly, and that's what struck me about this dream as well, that it's manifesting what Feyre knows deep down and has tried to avoid acknowledging, that Rhys plans to sacrifice himself and isn't prioritizing being with Feyre. He instead is giving himself over to whatever evil requires his sacrifice. And I think that must suck for Feyre.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When Feyre wakes up, her stomach is a roiling mess, the nausea reminiscent of early Mist and Fury when Feyre continued to struggle with her guilt and her humanity.
Rhys is the one to wake her, and he has to use that, quote, primal command he so rarely wielded. It's the same way that he woke her up back in Mist and Fury, the command of a leader.
It's interesting that that only comes out when he wakes her up from nightmares.
I want to know what her command noise is. Rhys. I don't know. Rhys! Rhys!
And this is where Feyre's resolve and motivation for the entire novel crystallizes, at least from my point of view. Where up until now, Feyre has acted out of a sense of vengeance or vindictiveness for what happened to her sisters and her friends, Feyre's focus now shifts to preventing the worst outcome. Feyre will protect those around her not out of duty, which you could say is how she once took care of her sisters when she was human, but Feyre will do it out of love. Quote, never again. Never again would I let someone hurt him, Rhys, like that. Hurt my sisters like that. Never again.
God, just stop talking, Feyre. Just stop talking, because always works out opposite of what you promise and say never will happen.
It's like season 2 all over again. She keeps jinxing herself.
She really does. You'd think that by now, Feyre, you'd learn to not jinx yourself, but
it's true.
It's fine. It's fine. Let's get into some breadcrumbs.
So we do have to give multiverse spoilers here and Silver Flame spoilers.
Yep.
And they're pretty dominant in this breadcrumb section. So if you don't want to be spoiled, stop listening.
We had a great time.
We had a great time.
We had a great time. Come back and listen next week. Or stick around if you want to hear what the question thing is at the end. Anyway, the question thing. The thingy that we do. So in chapter 19, Feyre, thinking about Rhys's penchant for self-sacrifice, says, quote, Rhys would survive. He wouldn't dare sacrifice everything to make sure Rhys would. He had to. He had with Amarantha, and he'd do it again without hesitation. And yet she ignores everything that shows signs, right? She knows that he would sacrifice himself. He can't even be in denial, like she's admitted it.
Her mind.
Her mind.
In chapter 20, we have some of our multiverse spoilers. The first one, the libraries in Prythian before the war were restricted to just Fae because, quote, the books were full of magic, and in them were things they wanted to keep humans from knowing. This is a lot like the Fae libraries in Crescent City, which are heavily guarded and difficult to penetrate. Is it coincidence? I think not.
Nothing's a coincidence. Another multiverse spoiler. When Feyre says humans don't have magic, Rhys says, some do. Usually the ones who can claim distant Fae ancestry. Like Feyre herself, maybe? Like the descendant of a certain star-born princess, perhaps?
Perhaps. Feyre asks what happened to half Fae, half humans once the wall went up, to which Rhys responds, quote, it did not go well for the half-breeds. Many were offspring of unwanted unions. Most usually chose to stay with their human mothers. And that sounds a lot like Bryce Quinlan to me.
Yep, it does. When Feyre asks what's at the bottom of the library, quote, I, Rhys, once dared Cassian to fly down and see, and he came back up faster than I ever seen him fly, white as death. It's been 200 years, and he still won't tell me what he saw. If you ever mention it, he goes pale and shaky and won't talk for a few hours. It's too bad that Cassian has to relive that experience.
It's so cruel.
It's very cruel.
And our last breadcrumb, also in chapter 21, when Rhys tells Feyre that the priestesses decide who gets to use the library, quote, outsiders are allowed to use the library for research, but only if the priestesses approve, and only if they take binding oaths to do no harm while they visit.
Feels like college.
But it hurts when you know Hybern is around the corner with his crows, and they're going to cause so much destruction in the library.
Feels like college.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a question.
You have a question?
Yeah. How is Rhys's internal struggle coming through, and is Feyre adequately equipped to help Rhys's destructive nature?
To me, Rhys's destructive behavior is coming through in his continued need to keep information from Feyre.
Mm-hmm.
And though he's willing to acknowledge the fact that he's willing to sacrifice himself, he's not willing to accept any offers of help nor share information that might be worth other people knowing. To that, I don't know that Feyre is ready.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've shown increased emotional intimacy between the two of them and increased vulnerability throughout the start of this novel. However, Feyre still sucks at communicating verbally.
Yeah.
And she's not willing to call out the things that she sees with Rhys. And so to what extent can she help him? There's a reason why she goes behind his back and keeps information from him, because that's the only way she knows how to help him, because that's how he helps himself.
I would say yes to everything you said. Also, trigger warning here for the following subjects of suicide, but I think that it's fair to say that Rhys is kind of suicidal in his own way. And I know we talk about self-destructive behavior, but what is this destruction going to get him? Death every single time, right? He's not doing self-destructive behavior and gambling and drinking and, all these other things. Like, what he's doing are things that will kill him.
Yeah.
And eventually does kill him. And, you have the dynamic between Rhys and Feyre. It's switched because back in Mist and Fury, Feyre's the one who had more suicidal thoughts and tendencies. And now it's Rhys. And it's such a shift from Mist and Fury Rhys of someone who was like, you gotta live, Feyre. We have to push through. Don't let Amarantha win. to, I think that this is him not knowing how to handle a good thing. Good thing being Feyre.
I completely agree with you. And that was the thought that was running through my head as you were speaking. We see him cry at the end of Mist and Fury because he doesn't feel like he deserves happiness with Feyre.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because he hates himself on very deep levels because he's had this mask of evil for so long.
Yep.
And so he doesn't feel like he deserves happiness. He doesn't feel like he deserves Feyre. And therefore, to deserve her and to deserve that happiness, he has to be a martyr.
Yep. Yeah, because he doesn't want to live because he doesn't think he deserves her, and the best way to go out is to do what he loves, and that's saving all of his friends.
Exactly.
And it's really sad. And Feyre, she's picking up on some of it, but she's not equipped for it.
She's not.
No human is equipped for that.
No.
Like, that's for a therapist.
Yeah. It's true.
I mean, and again, this is a fantasy book. Like, we're not going to get therapy. Like, they're going to somehow manage to get through and fix it all together. But, just a reminder for any of our listeners, that's not for anyone to solve. That's for a therapist.
Yeah.
So, if you're relating to this part of the book, just know that you're a human. You're not meant to save people.
Yeah.
We pay copay for that.
We pay a copay for therapists to help us. And at the end of the day, the person needs to decide that they want to save themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Rhys.
Yeah.
Baby boy. It's so sad. I didn't really.
It's really heavy.
It's really heavy. I did not appreciate just how depressed Rhys is.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's made worse by the fact that Feyre sacrificed herself and went to the Spring Court.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely set him off even more.
Oh, 100.
God, I love this book now. Like, it just
all the more reason for Feyre to have never gone to the Spring Court.
Right. It's stuff like this that is making me appreciate this book so much more.
Yeah.
I totally missed this level of self-destruction that Rhys was on.
Yeah, it just seemed stupid.
Yeah.
It seemed stupid to me. Like, that is not the answer, Rhys. But now it's like making sense of he doesn't know how to handle happiness.
He doesn't. And this is why it's a fantasy book, because he figures it out in the end, because she magically ties him to her.
And here's our featured review from Apple Podcasts.
This one's from Sid. We love Sid. Titled, Such a Fun Podcast. I downloaded Apple Podcasts just to review since Spotify doesn't do reviews. The hosts have such a fun dynamic, and it feels like you're talking about your books with your friends. It's so rare that I am actually able to talk about these books I'm reading with someone else who has also read them. So it's such a nice podcast to listen to. Sid, had fun talking to you at the TikTok Live.
Thanks, Sid.
Thank you, Sid. Sid's the best.
Sid is the best. And this is actually something we hear a lot, that people don't get to talk about these books with their friends.
Yeah, I understand that. But persistence is key, guys, because eventually you break them down.
Like me.
Like you. Took years, but you get there. But it is fun to be able to have someone to actually connect with over these books.
And we're glad we get to connect with you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Please make sure you go to Apple Podcasts to leave a review, and we'll read them during one of our episodes. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we'll be exploring chapters 22 through 24 of A Court of Wings and Ruin.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. Bye.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.